Dave, when you look at or I guess looking ahead to Walker's start tomorrow, when you look at his start from the NLDS, what did you see from him in that one? And what are you seeing in which he could probably maybe carry some things over or make some adjustments with facing the Mets tomorrow?
I think in totality, with Walker, I would want the same effort, execution, focus, and certainly a different result. And I say that a lot of it was Walker's, not doing. So, yeah, I think a lot of the same. And obviously in this situation, series at 1-1. Here on the road again, which we feel really confident in Walker. I expect he's going to come out with the same kind of conviction and focus.
Let's go to Dave, third, fourth row on the left.
Dave, you showed in the last round you guys can make adjustments and be nimble during a series. There's been a lot of talk about Ohtani not getting any hits without runners on base. Will Smith only has 2 hits this postseason. Is there any thoughts about shuffling the lineup for the rest of the series?
No, there isn't. I just think that, early on, it's just funny how things change where there was a lot of concern about Shohei not being able to get hits with the runners in scoring position. And now we're all trying to find ways that he's have to get guys on base so he can hit, right? So I kind of find that comical a little bit. So I think that I don't think anyone can predict who's going to get on base in Game 3 or Game 4. So I feel that, kind of there's some tweaks that I do make as far as, Teo, Freddie, the 5, 6, maybe the 7, 8, 9. But to think that, I'm going to move Shohei to the 4 or the 3, that's just not going to happen. Yeah, that's something that he's missing some good pitches. You can look back at the last couple weeks where he had the big Musgrove homer. He had the big homer in San Diego. But outside of that, there's a lot of balls that he's missing. I think we all see that. Will's working hard. So I don't know, if it's the mechanical thing. I know it's not a moment type thing. I do feel that these guys in particular, maybe the Padres as well, they're trying to crowd him a little bit. I can see that. So I just trust Will in big spots. And so he's always performed in the postseason, and hopefully we have a long way to go. And I just trust his at bat. And, Sevy's pretty good against right. I just still feel that, if he can kind of leave that ball alone, that ball in, and then he's going to get some sliders and just I just feel he's due for another big hit or two.
We'll stay back in that area. Carey on the left, and then we'll go to Jack.
Dave, when you've looked at Shohei's difficulties that he's had in the postseason, they've been against Manaea and Yu Darvish, who are both difficult pitchers. Deliveries are unusual.
And Tanner Scott, right. Right.
Do you see that as kind of like the other at bats have been fine?
I do, and I think that, I certainly I think I appreciate the guys that he's faced and understanding that that's probably some of the reason why whatever his production or average or whatever anyone wants to look at, he's faced some tough pitchers and they're pitching him very tough. So for me, I'm looking at tomorrow. I feel really good about tomorrow. Probably not going to see Manaea till Game 6 if there is a Game 6. And so, I feel good with it, but I do feel that he's got to continue to, manage his hitting zone regardless of who's pitching. And I do think that he can hit anyone, as we all know. But he's still got to be kind of stubborn in his zone. And I do feel that, tomorrow he's got to get back to the big part of the field. And if he can do that, it should bode very well for all of us.
Stay back there with Jack.
One more on Shohei. Have you been surprised that he's kind of expanded the zone again in the postseason? And do you think that's been more a byproduct of his approach and trying to do too much or trying to make something happen, or just more, pitchers pitching him extra carefully right now, and that's just kind of being what he's getting at the plate?
I was surprised with the Darvish. I was surprised that he expanded versus Darvish. Scott is just it's nitrous coming at you with the slider. That's just a tough bat for any left-hander. Mania, I just can't imagine the ball coming from the first base coming in at you and then trying to hit him. So I just don't see that. I just think that that's kind of an outlier. But outside of that, I mean, for me, honestly, the Darvish kind of at bats was a little bit for me. But again, that's something you're facing your childhood idol. I don't know how much that comes into play. I have no idea.
And then just to check on some of the injured guys, like how's Gavin and Freddie, and then Huddy doing today?
So I talked to Gavin. Gavin feels much better today. So we'll see how he comes in tomorrow, but my expectation is that he'll be in there. Freddie, haven't seen him yet. My expectation is that he'll be in there. And Huddy, haven't seen him either. My expectation is he'll be ready to go tomorrow.
We'll come over to the right side, Fabian.
I know Yoshinobu's lined up for Game 4. Is that sort of still the plan for you guys?
That's still the plan, yes.
And to go back to Shohei, I mean, is there a tendency where you see him expand into something like bad habits starting to pick up, or is it something where it's isolated incident, especially when it comes to Darvish, like you mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's isolated. There have been times that he has to reset. I think as all hitters do, and sometimes certain pitchers sort of kind of trigger bad habits, and you've got to identify that to then reset. So I do feel that he's cognizant of that. And so, again, my expectation is that he is going to reset today, get to the big part of the field, and take some good at-bats versus Severino.
What's different about Severino than maybe the version you guys saw last year with the Yankees?
You know what, Fabian? I can't even really speak to that totally intelligently. I know there's a lot of velocity. There's a slider in there. Certainly better versus right than left. But again, he's been a big game pitcher. There's some guys that have some history with him. So we'll be ready for whatever kind of he has planned for us.
Let's go to the far left, Bob, and then we can go back to Kirsten.
Hey, Dave, there's so much talk in this series about Shohei and American League CS about Judge. You have a theory on why the big boys seem to get shut down in postseasons, whether it was Bonds back in the day, A-Rod had his struggles. Is it a thing where people just focus so much on shutting that one guy down?
I think that's a combo. I also feel that, and conversely, I saw how great David Ortiz was in the postseason. I think it's just those guys have certain expectations from everyone in themselves, and you have to be willing to essentially, whether, I say not blink, you have to be willing to just continue to hold until you get your pitch. And if not, knowing that opposing pitchers are not going to, quote unquote, let you beat them, and you have to be willing to be patient. And so I played with Barry, and obviously everyone saw it in 2002. Then he really came to life, and he was just, extraordinary in that series. And once Alex figured it out, he was obviously great in the postseason. But I do think that there was a lot of pressure that they might put on themselves initially. But when they get back to, it's kind of what I said before, is all people expect is them to kind of do what they've done throughout their career, their stat line, their regular season stat line, and as opposed to doing more, and if Barry probably had that mindset, having a 1,500, 1,200 instead of having a 2,000 OPS, he might have been better, because that includes walks too. So I don't know, Bob, but it's a very interesting kind of discussion for sure.
Kirsten.
Quickly going back to Freddie, when you look at just these 3 games back to back to back, obviously we saw him play night to day back in Los Angeles, but do you feel like with him it's just a day-to-day conversation of kind of seeing how he's feeling? And do you think that weather could play into something, just considering it is cold and wanting to keep his ankle and his body warm out there?
It is a day-to-day conversation. I just don't see any world that he doesn't start a playoff game in the NLCS. But again, if he can't do it, that's very telling. The weather probably will play a factor. I hope it won't be too kind of limiting. But yeah, I mean, I think we're mindful of it. But, as of tomorrow, having the off day, I feel good about tomorrow. And let's just hope that, he can get out of it feeling good for game, 4.
Jesse in the second row.
Great, Dave. I want to ask you about JD Martinez. Guys have called him like the batting whisperer a little bit. What goes on in the dugout during a game? What is he doing there? You think that's helpful, and even outside the game? Do you have an anecdote that you can recall from last year?
He is sort of the hitting whisperer. He was a very good mentor. Has been a good mentor for Mookie. Hopefully he's not giving too many trade secrets, which I'm sure he is. How we think on the hitting side. He's a hitting savant. I mean, he loves the game. He's obsessed with hitting. Not the greatest of base runners, but he likes to hit, and he just commands respect. He's won. He's very likable. He cares, and so obviously that was a big addition for the Mets, and he's helped, I'm sure, in a lot of ways that people just don't even realize.
Do two last quick ones, Shy, straight back, and then we'll finish with Jack.
Dave, this isn't specific to Ohtani, but with that type of elite, high-impact type of player, how do you look at or how weigh the benefits of batting that type of player, leadoff, extra at-bats, instant impact, versus maybe trying to put him in a 3-4 where you can maybe leverage some of the damage in a bigger way?
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that there's a whether it's a philosophy or a I guess philosophy, right? It's how you construct a lineup given who you have in your lineup. Because conversely, you hit him third or fourth, and in that 9th inning, he doesn't get that last at bat, and then the whole world saying, God, why didn't he hit earlier? Where we all know the world would have changed, right? But those are things that I think that we have complete solace in knowing that giving our best hitter 5 cracks to be instant offense, and also believing that the guys in the bottom of the order can create some havoc and get on base. And I thought we did that really well in game 1 of the CS. And so just give them opportunities. So I just have a hard time kind of I can't predict the game. And so I feel good about what I can predict is Shohei hitting 1 and getting the most at bats from our offense.
We'll finish up with Jack.
Is the plan to have Jack in Game 5, or will that depend on the next couple nights?
That'll depend on the next couple nights. That's right. Yep.
All right, Dave, thanks. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yep.